Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second in the series of the AAE RGA grant submission overview for program year 2021 teleconferences. So this one is on the grant submission process. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So let me just start by saying the same thing as I did last time on this AAE or Alaska Adult Education Grant Project Timeline. It is a competitive grant. This year, we've opened it up to a 4-year grant cycle. It begins July 1 of 2021, and it runs through June 30th of 2025. If you are approved for funding, the first year will be approved through the grant process, which will end in June 30th of 2022. And then there is renewal years thereafter, which are contingent upon the grantee's ability to be successful in implementing the grant terms, the performance expectations, and then providing adult education in their region. And then each grantee must submit a renewal package every year for the additional 3 years of the grant. All grant awards are subject to availability of funds from the federal and the state government. And then I want to remind you of the application deadlines. Again, this teleconference and the PowerPoint will be uploaded to our AAE Grant Resources website. The first one is already up there if you need to go and review it. That was completed on February 9th and it is available now. And this one should be available either today or tomorrow, depending on when I can get to it and when our grant master or our webmaster can get to it. So the application deadline, all grants must be submitted no later than 5 p.m. Alaska Standard Time on April 15th. Applications received after that time will not be considered. They have to be received within our office at that time. Additional documents that are not attached to the original grant application will not be accepted. They have to be in one package or we cannot consider those documentations as well, and you will not get points for those. Grant submittal, there are 3 ways to submit the grant. The first one is through our email address in the RGA. It does say GED@alaska.gov. We have updated a new email address, ak.adult.ed@alaska.gov. Either one of these email addresses work. If you do send it to the GED@alaska.gov, it does get rerouted to the ak.adult.ed@alaska.gov, but either one of these email addresses you can use to submit the grant. It can be mailed in, and again, it has to be received no later than 5 p.m. on April 15th. So if you're using mail, please be aware of that. And if it is not in our office, we cannot accept the grant. So I understand that the mail has some issues, but you guys need to be aware that the fact that you need to mail it in plenty of time, I would suggest tracking it and making sure that you're mailing it out in plenty of time to receive it. And then of course, there's the fax number. You can fax it. Our fax is right there. And the only 2 people that check the fax are myself and Donna. So we do watch the fax daily. After the grant has been received, please be aware that we do have a grant management system, and all grantees that do receive the grant must re-enter the grant information into the online grant management system. Adult education, we are in the middle of renewing or updating our grants management system, and we're not sure if it will stay with eGrams at the time that our grant is released or moved to our new system. So right now it is not going to be on our grants management system. We're going to the old way of submitting, but please be aware that all grants will be on our grant management system one way or another, and all information will have to be uploaded after the grant is awarded. Grantees are responsible for the account profiles, submitting the original grant information, any monetary reconciliation, and reporting on that grant management system. So be aware of that. There are 6 components to the application that you need to be aware of. The first one is that demonstrated effectiveness. If it is not submitted with that grant, that is number one. It is the first, it is the key to our grant. If you cannot demonstrate effectiveness, we cannot even look at your grant thereafter. But if it is not with the package, we can't look at your grant. So be aware of that table 1A or table 1B, depending on if you have received half the funding with this last grant cycle or you have not. It is an and or table. You do not have to complete both. That is a question that came in and I wanted to stress that question. There is the cover page, and I'm going to go over these in a little bit more detail, but be aware that there is an application cover page and you do get points for that cover page. The grant narrative, including table 2 and 3, go with that grant narrative. There is a budget narrative and a Form 165. There is additional documentation that needs to be with that grant, and of course the terms and conditions. So there is application formatting. Please read the RGA and instructions carefully before submitting your final grant and make sure that you're following that information. Just be aware of anything that's in the RGA, that you're making sure that you're crossing your T's, dotting your I's before your final submittal. Their demonstrated effectiveness, again, I went over this last time, but I'm going to go over it really quickly again. You have to demonstrate effectiveness in reading, writing, math, and English as a second language instruction. Employment, attaining the secondary school diploma or its equivalent. GED testing and receiving a high school equivalency. And then the transition to post-secondary education and training. It will look different in all regions, but you do have to be able to demonstrate effectiveness. You must complete that table 1A for individuals that are receiving current funding, or table 1B if you have not previously been funded in this last grant cycle by WIOA Title II funds. And if you are creating a consortium that is more than one program going into it together, each member of that consortium must complete that demonstrated effectiveness on their own standing. I can't stress that enough. And if they are currently funded under Title II, they can complete table 1. If they are currently not funded under under WIOA Title II, they would complete table 1B. But they have to go together and you have to demonstrate effectiveness on your own. So that's important to realize there. And then all data must reflect program years 2018, which is July 1 of 2018 through June 30th of 2019, and PY program year 2019, which is July 1st of 2019 through June 30th of 2020. The application cover page is a requirement. Again, it is the max of 3 points, but it is 3 points when you do have a minimum and maximum you have to get. So make sure that you are completing your cover page. All contact information, including the applicant's name, which is the agency that's submitting the grant, must be on there. The region of the grant administration, and I have that on the next slide. The type of organization, which is the eligible provider, see that eligible provider definition to get your type of organization. In order to administer a grant, you have to be an eligible provider. It is in the RGA. By all means, go into the definitions. It is on page 5 is those definitions. And then again in the definition, which is appendix JH, something like that, look at those definitions and make sure that you are an eligible provider, and then where does your eligible provider fall for your type of organization. You must have a DUNS number, make sure that is on the cover page. The program area of capacity to address with this grant funding. Is it adult ed? Is it a corrections? Or is it IELCE or integrated English literacy and civics education? What is this grant going to address in the narrative? And what are we looking for when we're looking through this grant? It needs to be addressed on the cover page. Don't make us hunt and find it. It needs to be clearly stated. If you are applying for more than one grant, say you're applying for an adult ed, you're applying for corrections, it needs to be two separate grants. You cannot combine it into one grant and say, I'm going to do this throughout the entire state, and I'm going to do corrections, adult ed, IELCE. That has to be three separate grants. There are components for each one of them that you must address. The same with the regions. I'm going to go into the regions right now. If you're going to apply for, let's say, Aleutians and Anchorage, you must have a grant for Aleutians narrative and complete package. You must have a grant narrative and complete package for Anchorage. They are completely graded differently. They are regions in themselves, and you must write them separately. Be aware that these are the 13 regions. You can write a grant for one, you can write a grant for multiple ones, and then there's two additional grants that are statewide grants, one being the Integrated English Literacy and Civics, the IELCE, and one being the Department of Corrections or DOC institutional grants. The narrative needs to have a plan for adult education service delivery. It needs to have the 13 considerations, and it needs to have additional considerations if you would like those additional points. It does not have to have the additional considerations, but they range from 3 to 6 points of additional free points if you choose to write to those additional points. They are not mandatory, they are additional. There are some narrative formatting that you must abide by, or that the points are there for you to either obtain or not obtain. It can be no longer than 25 pages. From page 26 on, we will not be scoring. So if you have a fantastic idea on page 27, it will not be scored. We will be scoring page 1 through 25. Anything beyond that will not be part of the grant scoring part of that rubric. Please keep your spacing to 1.5, a minimum of 1.25 or 1.5, and that's between paragraphs. That's not in the paragraph itself. That please don't make it huge. But the huge spacing, the paragraph itself can be a normal paragraph, but your spacing between paragraphs needs to be 1.5, a minimum. A minimum of 12 or a minimum of 12-point font. Please don't make huge fonts for us. Don't make tiny fonts for us. 12-point font is a fantastic one for us. And then margins need to be normal margins, not narrow margins, so that you add more to it. Narrow 1 inch margins around. Excuse me. Sorry about that. And then categories must be used to identify each section. For example, the regional needs assessment needs to be titled regional needs assessment, so we know where it is clearly labeled and that we do not have to again find it, so that the scoring is easy and we can give you your max amount of scoring for those categories within the narrative. So when you're addressing those 13 those 13 requirements for WIOA, please make it easy for us to give you your maximum points. Clearly state that it is in this section when you're adding those, and those are in the RGA, the 13 requirements. So if you're talking about learner support services, make it clear that it is the learner support services section so that we can give you your max amount of points for that. Fonts on tables can be as little as 10 points. We know that the tables are big, and there's a lot of data that goes in there. You can use as little as 10-point font. Please do not go any smaller than that. We are not as young as we once were, and our eyes don't like to adjust too much to that. And then please be clear, concise, and make it easy for us to read, because the easier that we can read it and the easier that we can understand it, again, we want to be able to give you the maximum amount of points for your effort in your narrative. There is a budget narrative, and there is a max of 9 points on that. Your budget narrative must be accompanied by a project budget form. It's Form 165. You can get that on our grant resources page, jobs.alaska.gov/AAE/grant_resources. If you Google Alaska AAE, it will take you to our AAE site, and then grant resources is on the side. And all of our stuff is on the bottom, including these recordings will be on there as well. The narrative must include a summary of cost by line item, including your personnel, services, your travel, your contractual, your supplies, and your equipment. Again, it is defined in the RGA what exactly goes into each of these for the narrative. And your budget narrative section will be used to review by the committee to better understand these expenses, including whether they are, whether they're reasonable expenses. If you're stating that you're going to spend $20,000 on a tractor, that's not going to be reasonable to administering adult education. So that's stuff that they're looking for. This does not replace program-specific budget forms that are required if the grant is awarded. This is a projection. Once the grant is awarded, we will require grantees to, once the funding is allotted, to go back and really focus on their budget and get their budget outlined. There are some additional documentation. Like I stated before, you have to attach a proposed class schedule so that we can see your class schedule and what it would look like. Job descriptions. Please be aware these are job descriptions that are funded under the AFLA grant. If you have a position that administers AFLA fund or administers AFLA services, but does not get paid under the grant, we do not need that job description. However, please be aware that if you have anybody working on the AFLA grant, and this is going to come up in your qualified instructors, they do have to have professional development hours. So there's a distinction there. Anybody that works with our students and that are serviced under our grant must be part of our professional development. It doesn't matter whether they're funded under this grant or not. These are our students and they're serviced under these students. However, for the grant funding, we only need job descriptions for those that are funded under our grants. The same is true if you have not been previously funded under this last grant cycle. We will need resumes for those individuals that you plan to fund under this grant. If you have an indirect cost rate and you plan to use that, we do need an indirect cost rate allocation form. If you plan on using that, please be aware that we are restricted indirect cost rate. Again, refer to the RGA to learn more about restricted indirect cost rates and what that might look like for your company. Your indirect cost rate must be approved by a state or federal allocated agency, so be aware of that as well. You can add letters of support. They are optional. They are not scored. They are completely optional. They give us a better picture of who you are and who might be supporting your program. But again, they are not scored. So this is just an optional way of us to get a better picture of you. The terms and conditions must be signed, dated, and by the authorized representative of your company or your program. If they are not signed and dated by the program representative, this is the president of the company or the president of the college or the person who is authorized to run or to say, yes, we can run that grant. If you are a program coordinator or a teacher, you are not authorized to run this or to say, yes, we will run this grant. This needs to be the person that can say, yes, we are authorized, we're an authorized representative of this agency. There are assurance and certifications. There are terms and conditions, and there is a certification regarding debarment and suspension that all have to be printed out, signed, and dated and added to your grant. These are, if these are not there, you know, these are part of the grant package. They have to be put into that grant package. So please be aware of that. And then I just want to go over really quick, applications may be rejected if those signatures are missing or they're not signed by the appropriate person. If you're a teacher, please don't sign them. Please make sure the authorized individual is signing those. Required application format. If it's not used appropriately, we can reject your RGA. If there is changes in the specific terms or conditions to the RGA that you are changing, we can reject them. The terms and conditions specific to this RGA must be the same as what we put out there in the RGA. If there's a conflict of interest, if we receive the grant after closure, again, April 15th at 5 p.m. If you are debarred or suspended by the state, and then again, failure to demonstrate that effectiveness. We have to have that data. That's number one prior to us sending on your grant to the review committee. That is the gist of it. The gist of it, not the gist of it. And I'm going to open it up for questions. Anybody have any questions?
Wendy, I have a question.
Hi, Pamela.
Hi. When we are doing the regional labor market analysis, and due to our geographic location, we're not finding all of the information that is required on the chart. How do we proceed?
What I can do is I can add that to the frequently asked questions. I can take a look at it
Okay.
and figure that out. So if there is information that is not available in your region, that would be stated within your narrative and justified within your narrative as to why there is no labor market information within that region for that specific data. That is going to the AWIB first to review and make recommendations. So that would be reviewed by them. And so if there is some data missing for that specific section, you're going to need to justify it. But I will take a look at the tables and find out why there would be potentially something missing, and I will address it in the FAQs.
Okay, and then I have another question.
Sure.
The tables 1A, all the tables and charts, are those included in the 25-page narrative?
No, they are not. So the narrative is only the grant narrative. So it addresses the plan and it addresses the WIOA 13 considerations. And after that, all the additional documentation, cover page, everything is additional documentation, not part of the 25 pages.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So you'll have more than 25 pages. The narrative in itself is 25.
So a follow-up on that one, Wendy. If we add, a schedule, then what you're saying, that's not included in that 25, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So if we do that, or if we do another table in there of our own, yeah, okay. So then
if you decide to put a table within the narrative, that adds to the 25. So anything that you put into the narrative, including if you add a table or add data or add something to the narrative, that is part of the 25. Anything that we're asking you to, for additional documentation, such as table 1, 2, 3, those additional, I'm going to go back to these additional documentations that must be added. So why is it so? The terms and conditions, those are additional. All these additional documentation, so the proposed class schedule, the job descriptions, the resume, the indirect cost rate, those are not part of the 25 pages. Those are additional. But anything that you put into the narrative must be 25 page limit. Does that make sense?
Yes. Table 1, 2, and 3 are not, those are additional documentation.
Those are additional documentations, those are separate. But if you decide into the effective use of technology and you put a table in there and you say, here's the different people we're using and how it's effective, and you put a table within the narrative, now it's not additional, it's part of the 25 pages. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to clear that up really quick.
Okay, and a follow-up question on that one. You do mention the font size for the tables, but you don't mention the line spacing. Are we, sometimes spacing for tables is a little bit compressed. Is that correct? Are we able to do that for the tables, or do we need to stick to that 1.5 minimum spacing?
No, on the tables I have added, I have actually added the tables as a fillable on the website. And I do believe I use narrow for the tables. The tables are okay to add narrow, and it is okay to go a little bit over for that one. Just make sure that the heading is still on there so that we have the heading. There's a header and a footer on there.
And the line spacing is, it's okay to change that one up on that table?
Mm-hmm. Yep,
okay.
That's fine, as long as it all fits. The table is fine. And the table, there's no limit to the pages on the tables.
Okay, that brings me to another question. In your regional labor market analysis, the original table, I think, had 6 rows.
Mm-hmm.
Is that all you want? Is 6 occupational cluster? Or if we add more to it, what is the max number of that we can put in there?
This is all we're asking for, is this right here. This is what the AWIB is going to be grading. So if you add additional ones to it, they're not going to be looking at the additional ones. So we want the occupational clusters that are available in your area, their occupational title or code. What if it's different? Like, okay, what does their cluster look like? What is the title of that? And I've given you some examples at the bottom, or some resources for that, because I know that's out of your guys' realm as teachers.
Right.
And as program coordinators.
So can I throw an example out there?
Sure.
Okay. So under Education and Health Service, I have certified nursing assistants.
right?
And I have the occupational title code. And I have education needed. I was unable to find a 2020 employment estimate or a 2025 employment estimate or the growth rate, but I was able to get the median wage. Now I can get the overall state of Alaska, but not for my region. So,
Okay, we'll put in if that's the case, if you cannot find a regional one, then make the adjustment to the state and determine it, and you need to be able to justify that within your narrative. Because I know that it may be difficult in some of your regions. There's also information for the Alaska occupational data.
right, I have that.
Okay. And if you're having some trouble there, I would reach out to the Alaska Department of Labor at that. There's some information on the Alaska occupational data. It's the, I think it's the RNA that deals with that one. The resource, the research and analysis section. Whoever is in charge of that, reach out to them and see if there's any regional data.
So you prefer that we keep it to 6?
I prefer that you keep it to the, I think there's 7.
Okay, 7, because, okay.
5, 6, 7, there's 7.
We just pick the 7 most in our region, the 7 most in-demand jobs in our region.
Yeah. We need to know what's in your region. So what is available? What are you working with students to kind of, what does that analysis look like?
Okay. Well, that helps, Wendy, because I'm up to like 25.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. We need to kind of narrow that down, like top 10.
Right. So here's my second question. When we look at occupational title codes, can we be general? So for example, construction trades, helpers is 473,000. And then underneath that, there can be 473,000.
There is like 7,000. Yes.
Yes.
Find the cluster.
Okay, so we can start with the 47,300.
Yes,
and then just
find the cluster. Don't go into like, you know, a nail smith is like 00111. Yeah, find the cluster, the one that is most, what is in that cluster? How are you going to help them in that cluster?
Okay, thank you. That is very, very helpful information. Thank you.
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
There is a question in the comment box.
Okay.
Did you want me to read that?
Let me get to the chat. I apologize. So for consortium, does each member need to meet all requirements? And the answer is yes. So it will, okay, so yes and no. So the grant can be written together as a consortium, and everything can be done together, including writing the grant narrative, completing all of the information together, with the exception of it needs to be, we need separate DUNS numbers, you know, that needs to be completed. Everybody has to have their DUNS numbers together, you know, or separate, you know, as agencies. The demonstrated effectiveness has to be completed separate as a consortium. The past effectiveness, again, that's data that is built on your individual standing. So your past effectiveness will have to stand on its own. But the 13 considerations, how you're going to address the grant, can be done together. The assurances and certifications, that needs to be completed separate, as each agency is taking responsibility for the terms and conditions of the grant. The grant narrative, though, needs to be as one. How are you going to run this region? Does that help?
What about the budget narrative?
The budget is one budget. So if you're a consortium, it is one budget. How are you going to break out that budget for each individual? There's going to be a responsible agency that's probably going to do the budget. So if you have a consortium and it's agency 1 and agency 2, agency 1 is going to be responsible for the budgeting stuff, and agency 2 maybe running the grant. That's fine, but you still both have to show that you have demonstrated effectiveness in running adult education grants or running adult education programs if there's a consortium.
What I was wondering is if the one concentrates on ESL and one on math and one on literacy, when they put in the demonstrated effectiveness, different groups might be stronger in one area.
And that's fine. And that's perfectly fine. And we can see that. And as long as it is supported in the narrative, and in the beginning of the narrative, you state, this is a consortium. This is kind of how we're coming together. The narrative is going to kind of explain, this is how we're coming together and we're going to do this, right? But the feds have clearly stated that demonstrated effectiveness, that past effectiveness, all that stuff has to stand alone. You have to, in particular, the demonstrated effectiveness. That's a big, big one. That one has to be on your own merit. How did you stand by yourself? Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
When you said that the state, I believe in the last question, in the last session, I believe you stated that the post-secondary for the state of Alaska is defined as GED. Do you have any background on when or how that happened?
Ask it again. Is it Rosalind or Rosalind?
It's Rosalind.
Rosalind, okay.
Yeah, I believe, and maybe I misunderstood, in the previous session that you had,
Okay.
there was something that said when you talked about the post-secondary or the secondary requirement to high school, that GED is what is considered for Alaska.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any background on whether that's statute or?
Yes, it is. It is statute. It is, if you give me a second, I could stop sharing this. I'm going to go one more slide and then I will stop sharing and I will get you the statutes for that. Let me go really quickly. One more thing, if you have any more RGA questions after this, and I will reshare this after I find the statutes. You can send them to ak.adult.ed@alaska.gov, or you can mail them. All email inquiries or mail inquiries need to state that they're RGA inquiries, and the deadline for all inquiries is March 1st. I cannot stress enough that I cannot answer any other questions after March 1st. And then all frequently asked questions will be posted. I have a great list going by March 5th, on or before March 5th, hopefully a little bit before that, but by March 5th, I'll have it up on the website for you guys. I'm gonna stop sharing and let me see if I can grab that for you, Rosalind. Are there any other questions while I grab that information?
And you could respond later.
This is
Yeah, I can either put it in the frequently asked questions, or if you need it now, I can get it now.
this is Amy.
Amy.
I was wondering, it says that we have to we have to abide to the memorandum of understanding between the One Stop, but the memorandum on the website is expired on June 30th, 2020. So I'm wondering if there's a new memorandum and whether or not we can see a copy of that.
They are working on the MOU now because of COVID. things got shoved back a little bit. And so there is an extension on that MOU, even though it is expired. And they are working on the updates to that one as of right now. And as soon as that one does come out, it will be updated to our website.
Thank you.
So Rosalind, I'm sorry. So the articles or the ACCs, the Alaska Code is, if you've got this written down, it's 8 AAC 99.110, which is the high school equivalency. And it states that the GED test is the official state high school equivalency test. And so you can look up the information for that right now.
My internet just cut out. I got 8AC 99 dot.
It's 8 AAC dot, 8 AAC 99.110.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions?
I have a question on page 34. It's the table, the bottom part of the table, which is talks about grade equivalency. And the first line on the ESL portion says ESL beginning low, and then that next line says also ESL beginning low. I think that first line should be beginning ESL literacy.
It's stated on our NSR that it is ESL beginning low and ESL beginning low.
Okay, so it is from that, so don't change anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Even though the beginning literacy fits into that.
It does. It fits into it does state that in, I think, BEST or CASAS, it starts literacy that way. However, in our NRS, this is how they state it that way. So I used it off the NRS. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then since.
But Linda, I will go back and check that. And if there is, I will update that.
Okay, and then as far as the grade equivalencies, I talked to Cal, that sponsors BEST that we've been using, and they say that they do not have grade level equivalencies, which I know they don't use that. So CASAS uses that, but we're not really using CASAS yet for the ESL portion.
Okay.
So we should make a, kind of a translation to CASAS and include that as our best, since we've been best scoring this whole time, right? Does that make sense?
No, it's if you look on our website, again, I do everything by our website, don't I? If you look on our resources page and you look on the grant resources page, for those of you currently funded by AFLET, or for those of you that are going out for a grant, you can look at this as well. Under the Office of Career and Technical Education Guide or OCTAE guidance, there, it might be under NRS guide. Under the NRS guidance, I apologize, there is an educational functional level descriptors. You can use that in order to make that correlation.
Okay, so the descriptors are fine. That's what I was wondering about. Because, yeah, because otherwise, if we're using the numbers, we have to translate it from a different test that we hadn't really accepted into that 18-19 program year. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. I would use the descriptors because that is the NRS. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one in the chat. Do all the teachers in the program need to be certified teachers, or can paraprofessional instructors be utilized in the program? The answer to that is teachers do not have to be certified teachers. They can be, you have to have, they have to have a certain number of professional development each year in order to use teachers. It's teachers. I believe the teacher level is 12 hours and 9 hours. If somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. 12 hours for full-time teachers, 9 hours for part-time teachers, and they have to go through professional development. They also have required adult education training that must be done. But yes, we would prefer it not be paraprofessionals, or it should be teachers. You should have standards for your teachers, including your job descriptions that are that you're sending off to the state to be approved as part of your grant. But as long as they're maintaining that level of teacher, then they don't have to be certified teachers. I hope that answered your question. Any other questions? You're welcome. Going once?
Wendy, is it possible, since we are not great, haven't really been trained on the regional, oh, my brain just went dead, with the regional labor market analysis, is it possible to put a sample?
Of a labor market analysis?
Right, yes.
I will I will look into that,
Okay,
and I
thank you.
will get back to you, Pamela. And if it's possible, it will be added to the grant resources page, and added to the frequently asked questions. Any other questions? Okay, just I don't hear any more, and I don't see any more, which is great. Just remember, again, I can't answer any questions unless they're in that RGA format, and your deadline is March 1st. So I would highly encourage you to read the RGA several times. And if you have a question, please reach out to me, and I would love to, put it in the frequently asked questions, unless this is the only other opportunity to ask questions in an open forum. So I will get this recording up and into the website as soon as possible so that you can review this one. The other one is already up there, including the PowerPoint. So I will have both of those up there. And if you, like I said, any other questions, ak.adult.ed@alaska.gov. Please write in their RGA inquiry, and we won't answer you. Well, Donna will answer you with a nice little thing that says, thank you for your question, and it'll be in the frequently asked questions. But other than that, we appreciate your time. Hearing no more further questions for the last time. Thank you, and have a great day.
I have one last question.
Oh, yes, Linda,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, so if we, like my granting my agency is the university, is my contact information, I would like it if you had to contact me for information. So I would put my name as the contact or the both names with the agency?
It needs to go both names. You need to have the authorized agency, the authorized person, individual on there so that we know who to contact, but you can have a secondary contact so we know who would be running the grant, the program coordinator, the one that is responsible for the day-to-day operations. So it's fine to have two separate individuals. So somebody that oversees the agency, we need that contact information, and then who would be responsible for that day-to-day operation of the grant. Yep,
Thank you.
that's fine. Of course. Any other last chance? Okay, I appreciate your time and you guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.